these people? They're normal people, just like you and me. In your opinion, what is the first thing normal people do when they wake up in the morning? That's right. They go to the bathroom, have breakfast, and go through their daily routine. But if you think twice, what do you and these people would have never done only 15 years ago? Exactly. You switch on your smartphone. Actually, in this movie, you're gonna learn why checking your smartphone has become a necessity, almost as important as the need to pee. So, as soon as you wake up, you check your emails, texts, messages on Facebook, pictures on Instagram. And then all day long, you stay logged on and need to check regularly if you have received any messages, especially if you are expecting an important one. In other words, you check your smartphones around 150 times daily. The main problem is that 90% of the time, you refresh for nothing. Let's do a simple calculation. 150 checks per day, knowing that it takes about 6 seconds per check. That is to say 900 seconds daily, knowing that 90% of the time you refresh for nothing, which results in almost 14 minutes of use daily for nothing. Okay, 14 minutes is not that much. But the second problem is when you refresh for nothing, you tend to stay online because you're frustrated of not getting any news. And since your smartphone offers a lot of other attractive stimulations, you go on Facebook, you check your friends' walls, click on a link leading to another one and another, and it becomes an infernal spiral. Without even noticing, you've just spent an hour on your cell phone. Eventually, you waste way more than 14 minutes a day. The question is, why do you spend so much time checking over and over when most of the time your email inbox stays empty? To answer this question, we need to review some basic principles ruling human behaviors. Let's do it. Today, when we talk about human behaviors, people don't easily accept the existence of scientific laws ruling them. Probably because people think human behaviors are way too erratic to be explained with a simple rule. However, there really are some basic laws ruling our behaviors and affecting all of us, with no exceptions. These basic principles were discovered thanks to experimental science. B.F. Skinner is one of the first psychologists who got interested in these principles. One of them is the fact that the consequences of your behavior will affect your future behaviors. Let me explain. When your behavior is followed by a pleasant consequence, acting like a reward, it will increase and maintain the future frequency of that type of behavior so as to obtain the same consequence again, the same reward. For example, consequences like sex, money, big thrills, vegetables, social interaction, or George Michael songs. On the contrary, when your behavior is followed by an unpleasant consequence, it will decrease the future frequency of that type of behavior so as to avoid this unpleasant consequence. For example, pain, reprimand, tickets, big thrills, vegetables, social interaction, or George Michael songs. This principle ensures organism adaptation. Adaptation gives an organism a better chance to survive in its environment by avoiding dangerous stimulations or being attracted to the good ones. Avoidance and attraction activate different neurochemical mechanisms. It is commonly accepted that a chemical molecule in the brain called dopamine plays a major role in the reward process. this process allows the strengthening of behaviors. On the contrary, unpleasant consequences activate other neural pathways, allowing the inhibition of behaviors. So, in other words, behaviors are motivated, selected, and learned by their consequences, exactly like natural selection. Success endures, failure doesn't. Consequently, our choices are guided and determined by the benefits associated with our past actions. This basic behavior principle is quite simple to get. Now, let's try to understand something a little bit more complicated. So, we've just seen that your behavior changes depending on the pleasure derived from its consequences. Now, your behavior also changes depending on the regularity of these consequences. For example, you usually receive your paycheck, one of the pleasant consequences of your work, monthly, meaning on a regular basis. In this case, we talk about a fixed schedule of consequence. Quite the opposite, some behaviors may result in unpredictable consequences. For example, the slot machine. You insert coins, you activate the arm, but you never know when you'll win the jackpot. In that case, we then talk about variable schedules of consequence. 60 years ago, Skinner and his colleagues discovered the different effects of these types of schedules on our behaviors through an experimental method with pigeons. Pigeons are locked in a box with a button that, when pressed, liberates randomly food, the pleasant consequence, the same way a slot machine does. Thus, obtaining food becomes unpredictable for the pigeons. They don't know what push will give them food. Consequently, pigeons constantly activate the button all day long in the hope of getting the desired food, meaning the pleasant consequence. On the other hand, if pigeons are given food only when they press the button after the exact same period of time, they are then able to discern a consistency in the chain of events. So, they press the button only when food is released and not in an erratic way anymore. Do you see where I'm going? Well, compared to fixed schedules, variable schedules of consequences are known to strengthen your behaviors. Indeed, with variable schedules, we observe a very high rate of behavior with little hesitation in between. If you're a gambler, you can't predict when the money drops, so you tend to insert coins over and over, even though you know you will eventually lose money. In fact, casino managers have understood this behavior principle very well. How can we explain this difference of behavior according to the schedule? Actually, this mechanism rules the selection process. Human life is a constant cycle of trying to anticipate where and when to find benefits, all the while avoiding danger. How we predict the consequences and learn from them is vital to our survival. Consequently, human beings use prediction for all their actions and choices. With a variable schedule of consequences like gambling, people tend to play again and again because they don't know when they get the reward. Dopamine is responsible for the expectation of that reward. However, with a fixed schedule, people know exactly when they get the reward. So, if the expected pleasant consequence doesn't occur, the organism immediately detects this change thanks to an alert system. The omission of a predicted reward induces another dopamine neural reaction, this time leading to a behavioral inhibition. That's why if you are used to receiving your paycheck monthly, and if the checks suddenly stop coming, you'll end up being frustrated, and you'll eventually stop working. Of course, nobody is really conscious of these mechanisms. Now, let's go back to our main issue, smartphone addiction. Of course, humans are not pigeons. Or are they? Yet, it's precisely the same principle at play when you check your phone over and over. You can't predict when you will obtain a fresh social reward. The specific random schedule explains your smartphone addiction and consequently the infernal spiral you get sucked in. This mechanism partly explains why it's so difficult to change your smartphone addiction. You've noticed it's often useless trying by simply telling yourself to stop. Free will isn't effective precisely because you can't challenge these unconscious neurobiological mechanisms. One of the ways to challenge your habits is to simulate a regular reward coming from your smartphone. Thus, you'll learn how to check your messages only on a regular basis, and that's already a huge program. Besides, neurobiological mechanisms do not only apply to smartphone addiction, but also to other impulses, such as eating behaviors, smoking, biting your nails, procrastinating, depending on others, speeding. To conclude, thanks to what you've just learned about psychological principles, you should be able to start understanding why human behaviors are generally so difficult to change.